The world has been brought to its knees by the coronavirus. To find solutions, we'll host entrepreneurs and scientists, doctors and senators, leaders working on the front lines of the emergency to save the country. I'm your host, Evan Baer. Welcome to the Situation Room. Well, first up, excited to welcome Governor George Allen to the show. We are so thankful to have you with us, Governor. We know that you've served the country in a bunch of different ways in the United States Senate, there in the great state of Virginia as well, and currently on this commission, the NCRC. Let's start there as we get you on the show. Would love to hear a little bit about what the commission is and what exactly it is recommending.
Can you see me and hear me?
We can see and hear you great. Thank you.
Okay, good. The National Coronavirus Recovery Commission is exactly what the title is. It's an effort of 17 of us, diverse folks from all over the country, different backgrounds, to put forward specific recommendations that are constructive to governors, to localities, to Congress, to the White House, the executive branch, the president, as well as businesses and civil society to reopen our society and our economy as expeditiously and safely as possible. And my view of what's been going on is there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of disinformation, there's a lot of frustration. I said I'll do this because I want to bring the concept of proportionality and balance to this. You're never going to get 100% one way or the other. And it is my view that the governors do need to lead, and you're going to see the laboratories of democracy and innovation, the states doing different things. Our very first recommendation, and so much of this is implemented by governors, and looking at it on a locality by locality or regional basis, that where the incidents are low, why hold them back? Why keep caging free people and free enterprise when in those regions they can start reopening? And every day that goes by, we're going to see a greater atrophying of the American spirit, and some businesses are simply not going to be able to reopen. And the loss of livelihoods, as well as loss of lives, needs to be mitigated by the ideas that we're coming up with. Some states, believe it or not, Evan, there were some states, and some may still are doing it, they shut down other medical operations and facilities, and they said they were non-essential. And we saw in Virginia, children weren't getting vaccinations, or people were not seeing doctors. So you end up with maladies being untreated. And the reason for that was the projections, and most of the modeling has been wildly exaggerated, but there's been people losing jobs in hospitals because they said, oh, they're going to get inundated with so many COVID-19 cases, they're not going to be able to handle it, and so forth. But the reality is the PPE supplies are there for the frontline workers who are absolutely essential. Our hospitals are not getting overrun; they're below the capacity that they need. And so these are some of the things that governors need to make the right decisions on. And we look at what states are following a lot of our recommendations. Tennessee is, Texas, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Iowa, Colorado, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina. Those are the states that seem to have very good, reasonable governance. And by the way, all of this is not just some wild approach, just open everything up. Social distancing will need to continue. Businesses will need to have protocols to make sure their workers are safe. And if they have customers coming in, they're going to need to be safe. One of our recommendations also, though, is that businesses need to have some liability protection or immunity. If they're making a good faith effort to protect their workers and their customers, they shouldn't be hit with these lawsuits. And that's very important for manufacturers and for all businesses. We also are recommending consideration of an idea to help jumpstart hiring, and that is a payroll tax holiday just for a period of time. Art Laffer and Steve Moore and Steve Forbes brought that to our commission's attention. And that's the easiest way to help workers with a 7% tax cut, so to speak, that they don't have to pay that tax, and the same 7% plus deduction or reduction in the cost for hiring. So those are
Yeah.
some of our ideas to restart our economic engine and protect those who are particularly vulnerable. And we see who's vulnerable. And I'll take Virginia. 58% of the people who have died in Virginia are in nursing homes. And you see this across the country.
Mm.
These long-term care centers are just, it's just tragic. And
Right.
we need to focus on safety in these long-term care centers. Also densely populated places and those that have mass transit. Those are other indicators that we're learning from this virus.
Well, I do want to pick up and learn a little bit from you about the payroll tax and the liability issues, because I want our listeners to really understand the implications of those. First, though, step back a little bit. You served there as the governor of Virginia. Help us understand how a governor would be wrestling through this right now. They have health experts both on their team and outside who are saying, if you push too fast, your people are going to die. They probably have small business owners who are saying, I shut down my business and my, fired employees can't buy food for their kids anymore. Take us into that seat. As a governor, what is it like getting and processing lots of different input?
That's a good question, Evan. We didn't have something like this when I was governor. In fact, this is all unprecedented. And I don't think ever in history we've ever seen a government decreeing a recession or depression. We'd have situations, though, where you'd have a hurricane come. And I remember all the emergency management people saying, this hurricane's going to hit Virginia Beach, come up the James River. This is the nightmare scenario. And you need to evacuate people from Virginia Beach. And I said, well, we need to warn them and so forth. And then folks at Virginia Beach were having hurricane parties. And this really infuriated the emergency folks. And they said, you have to use mandatory evacuation, which means the governor can take people out of their homes. And I said, I just can't see taking people out of their homes. I'll give urgent warnings, get elderly people or those who can't move well or children, get out of there, have them out of the disaster area where it's going to hit. And so what you have to do is balance all of this. There are folks who want 100% safety. There's folks, when I was always trying to raise the speed limit on interstates, that they didn't want to raise the speed limits. Yeah, we could all be much safer. There'd be fewer car wrecks if everyone drove 35 miles an hour. But that, to me, people would fall asleep and drive off the road. But you have to balance it. You have to have proportionality. And again, in this situation, you have to say, what is the least restrictive way of reasonably protecting people? And at the beginning of this, a lot of folks were flying blind. The president gets reports that 1 million or 2 million people are going to die. And as this went forward, you look at the data and you're saying, wait a second, this is not anywhere near that. Every life lost is tragic, but proportionality, you have to balance it with, all right, but how many livelihoods are being lost? How many people are having other adverse effects in their lives, physically, monetarily, and also emotionally from this? And you're seeing a lot of other maladies and health problems because of the reaction to it. And so my view would have been to take more of an approach that I think the governors of Tennessee or Arkansas or some of those states would have taken. I would have tried to take the least restrictive approach while trying to reasonably protect people. And as you recognize, again, who's the most vulnerable? It's generally the elderly, particularly those with underlying conditions. And those folks do need to stay at home and really shouldn't be out. But the rest can use some personal responsibility and make sure that you're not congregating and that you wash your hands and you're disinfecting and sanitary effects. And some of them weren't going to open anyway. Say a movie theater, they're going to have a hard time regardless of what government did.
Right.
People aren't going to want to go on their own without the government decreeing it. And the other thing I never would have done is say, this is an essential business and this is a non-essential business. To me, it's the arrogance to say somebody's got a non-essential business. It's essential to those business owners. It's essential to the millions of people who work in those so-called non-essential businesses. And I would have said any business that's open, you need to make sure people stay away from one another and have good sanitary conditions. do the things that are necessary that we're recommending in this commission as we reopen, that you make sure you take the proper protocols and protections.
I know that on your short list, you're looking closely at the city of Bristol, perhaps a
Yeah.
tale of one city and two states. Tell us, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, that's probably the national media has all of a sudden discovered Bristol, Virginia, Tennessee. Ken Burns had a great documentary on country music, and that was the birthplace of country music. First recordings were in Bristol, and I was there in December, and they were thinking it's going to be great for tourism, that Ken Burns documentary. Well, obviously not now. Now, there's a street called State Street. On one side of the double yellow line is the state of Tennessee. The other side is Virginia. Tennessee has opened up, reasonably opened up their businesses. And it's so sad and disappointing to see on the Virginia side, business owners who I know are literally looking across the street to shops, stores, restaurants that are open and all that vitality. And those businesses and workers in Tennessee probably like or appreciate Virginia's governor keeping Southwest Virginia closed. That is an example of a region that should have been open together. You'd have Southwest Virginia and Upper East Tennessee. It's the same media market. I started my career in Abingdon, which is near Bristol, and a lot of folks call it Virginiacy. And it's really one regional community, and it should have been open. Now, Northern Virginia, where they've had more problems, they have a metro system and all of that in the DC area, they're going to stay closed down longer. So finally, the governor's come around to recognizing you don't need to make the entire state. He said he didn't want to pick winners or losers, but by keeping the whole state treated the same, even though the data and information and reality was different, he was making the whole state losers. And so now at least
yeah, it's that old line about, are we talking about equal opportunity or equal outcome? And if you pursue equal outcome, we are all equally losers, is how it says,
Yeah, well, I think you got to look, and everyone says they want to look at the data, look at the facts. Well, look at the data, look at the evidence, the facts, the hospitalization, the equipment, the PPE equipment that is needed, and all the rest. In Southwest Virginia, there's communities there that not a single person has contracted the virus, and very few deaths. And in fact, even in Virginia, the youngest deaths, there's only 2 people who are in their 20s, no one younger. So again, the key needs to be focused on particularly the elderly who have underlying conditions,
right?
And especially focus on these long-term care facilities.
As a conservative, I'm curious if there's some long-term hope here. You mentioned earlier, I think, the phrase of the laboratory of democracies, these states sort of competing with each other. If broadly the Democratic-run states stay under lockdown longer and they have more harm done to their businesses, is there not a case that more employees and more business owners just move out of those states and go to more market-oriented states? And in some sense, the market just solves this problem for us.
Yeah, you froze a little bit, but I think I understand your question, Evan. Yeah, there are states. I give a lot of speeches, either with the National Association of Manufacturers or as Reagan Ranch presidential scholar for the Young Americas Foundation, and to ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council. And I call it the competition between the states. And the states that are winning in this competition are invariably states that have competitively lower tax burdens, have affordable energy costs, because many are energy dependent for manufacturing, in particular technology companies. Third, they have to have a right to work law where people are not compelled or forced to join a union as a condition of work. And fourth, if they have a skilled, capable workforce to draw from. And I love this magazine. It's called annual publication, Rich States, Poor States. I also look at Chief Executive magazine that rates the best states for business and the worst states for business. Annually, year after year after year, consistently the top 3 states that are best for business. And these are by the executives who make the decisions on site location. Number 1 is where you are, Texas. Number 2 is Florida. Number 3 is Tennessee. All 3 of those states have no state income tax. North Carolina is number 4. Nevada and Arizona are moving up because of California's terrible policies. And the states that are losing, that have high taxes, that they have compulsory unionization, that have high energy costs, they may have skilled workforce, but the ones that are losing population the most are New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Illinois. California's staying about even, but some of it's because of migration, some not legal with it. But it's going to get exacerbated, especially with the new tax law, where you're only limited to $10,000 as a tax deduction on federal tax returns. And so I think this exodus of people from states that are too costly, that are not business friendly, is going to accelerate. And we're going to see in the laboratories of democracy, the laboratories of innovation, the states, different states are taking different approaches. When this is all said and done in a few months, it won't be completely done, but enough that we can look back as to who made the right decisions, what can we learn from them, and who made the wrong decision. And we don't want to repeat that. And I'm not saying that any governor wants to make the wrong decision. They're making it in how they think is best, in the way that they weigh, in the way that they balance the lives and livelihoods issue. What we're trying to do with our commission is protect both lives and livelihoods.
On the note of the states competing, we're watching closely the sort of tit for tat with between the Elon Musk and California and our governor here in Texas, thinking that we may get Tesla and future manufacturing over to this state.
Sure.
I want to make sure, though,
especially when people say things to Elon Musk as that one, and they already have a facility in Nevada. And gosh, it's a place called Henderson, Nevada. I think 60% of the people moving there are from California, where you get zero income tax in Nevada and 13.3% in California. And Tom Brady made the right decision to go to Tampa rather than the Chargers, where he gets no state income tax, versus 13.3 if he was with the Chargers.
Well, as a Floridian and a Texan, I can appreciate both of those things. Hey, I want to make sure our listeners really understand what sounds like kind of a technical issue. I know is actually a really important one that you all have emphasized at the commission. Why is it important to provide legal immunity to private actors? What is at stake there?
What's at stake is if somebody's making a good faith effort to say and I've talked to some manufacturers who don't want to use their names, but they'll test every employee coming in, their temperatures, they come into their facility. They're spreading them out as much as they can. They're not going to have them in their lunchrooms together like they used to do. They'll have hand sanitizer all over. If any of them feels ill, they're going to do a test of them, and they're not going to come back in until they're clear, and they'll have to self-quarantine. The same with businesses, say restaurants, and they'll maybe have all their wait staff wearing masks, and they're going to take temperatures of folks coming in, customers, and they're doing everything that the CDC guidelines say for them to do. But someone somehow gets sick and then sues them. And it can take down an entire business, a small business in particular. It's just not, they're going to be struggling as it is, because a lot of these recommendations, say for a restaurant, are 50% capacity. Well, I'm not sure how many can even operate profitably at 50%. And if you get one lawsuit, they're going to say, oh, the heck with it. I can't afford it. So for the manufacturing of what's essential for our country, we can't have these frivolous lawsuits. And the plaintiff trial lawyers bar is already looking like buzzards as where can we come in and file a lawsuit? Because even though that they're doing everything according to CDC guidelines, they're taking all the precautions they can for a safe workforce and safe operations, some of these things slip through. And it's not because somebody's not trying to make sure their products and the workers there and their customers are safe. It just happens. And it happens, illnesses happen. A lot of times no one intentionally gets sick or wants to have anyone sick. And so I think for that security and stability and for their safety, this liability immunity is vitally important. I'm one who likes the states doing things, but this is a national issue and Congress should act. And while Congress doesn't act, there's nothing wrong with the states for their state courts passing these sort of safe harbors or Good Samaritan type liability immunities for their businesses, small, medium, and large.
Well, as a last one here for you, Governor, and so appreciate your time. We are big fans of the Heritage Foundation and the work of Vigory and Fulner and Wyrick and many common current friends there, David Azarad, Bridget Wagner, people just doing excellent work there. The story of Mandate for Leadership. Let's print and publish the conservative vision for policymaking and deliver them to Congress and pass some laws. It's just done amazing work for us. You guys have an important line I love in this commission, and you say that America's thought leaders should investigate and communicate how freedom has shaped America's response to the coronavirus and its effects, in contrast to the way that authoritarian regimes like China have. What's behind that point as a final question for you, Governor?
Well, first of all, Ed Fulner's a great guy, but I'll tell you, one of the best people I've ever met in my entire life is Kay James, who's now the president of the Heritage Foundation. I was lucky and blessed to have her as a cabinet secretary for Health and Human Resources. When I was governor, we passed the first statewide welfare reform laws. And there was no better person in the universe than Kay James to lead in that, as well as today. We believe in free people and free enterprise. And we're talking about supply chains. We're very vulnerable to supply chains out of China, which is hardly a free and open society. We want to make sure America and American free enterprise is not burdened by unnecessarily burdensome regulations or taxes. So more pharmaceuticals, medicines, equipment, and so forth are made in the USA. If not in the USA, at least with other freedom-loving allies, whether it's Europeans or British or Japanese, Australians, Mexico, South Korea, and so that we're no longer vulnerable with so many of our medicines and equipment coming from a country which charitably we'd say is a competitor and really in many respects an adversary. And so we need to show the world how the free enterprise system works with innovation, creative advancements in therapeutics and vaccines and all the rest, and we work with the rest of the world. Whether Israel comes up with the first vaccine or whether it's France or Switzerland, Austria, Iceland, or Idaho, USA, we want to all work collaboratively with other freedom-loving countries. And that's part of what we want to do. That's actually our fourth phase, our fifth phase we're going to have to work on in the next few weeks, and that's to make sure we reduce future risk of these pandemics and invest to make sure we have the stockpiles, we reform the supply chains, develop strategies to get the resources where they need to get, as well as antiviral agents and vaccines, and make sure that it's not just for the U.S., but this is for the free world, the rest of the world. We care about everyone. Of course, we care about our own first. And I think we're putting forward some very positive, constructive ideas for governors, local government leaders, Congress, and the executive branch, and the private sector.
Well, Governor, last one I have to ask. After all this praise of Tennessee, would you consider giving up your home state and moving across the border?
I almost did one time. I love Tennessee. I really do. And I think Rocky Top, by the way, is the best college song.
Oh, it's so good.
Country roads in West Virginia. I know you'll say the eyes of Texas. Or if you're a Florida Gator, you'll hate it. But go Vols. But
so good. Well, great answer on that.
I wish we could get Virginia Beach to be part of Tennessee.
Well, you heard it here from the governor. Maybe Tennessee will appropriate Virginia Beach. No, we'll see. But hey.